Sometimes life is an ocean, we're just trying to float. We get caught in slow motion from the undertow. Sometimes the path to choose is right in front of you. You just gotta let go. I'm the street lights that guide you home. I'll be the GPS when you've lost your phone. I'll be the song that's rocking in your headphones. I'll show you the signs to let you know you'll never. I'm the street lights that guide you home. I'll be the GPS when you've lost your phone. I'll be the song that's rocking in your headphones. I'll show you the signs to let you know you'll never be alone. You'll never be alone.
morning, everybody. Great to see you. Why don't you stand? We're going to begin this service by singing God's praise together. We celebrate the resurrection of Christ. He was given for us, but he rose again, forever demonstrating his power over sin and death. Would you sing with me? Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King above all kings, rules over all of creation, who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder and leaves us breathless in awe and wonder. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who brings it all? Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son or daughter? The King of glory, the King of glory, who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. I sing of his grace. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. We worship him this morning for his power, his glory, and his grace. We know that anytime we come here to worship, his presence is here. So as we stand in God's presence today and we worship him, we learn how God has crossed time and space and eternity to come and meet us. That Jesus came and lived on this earth for us so that he could be our Savior and our Lord. And in moments like this, we're reminded of the humble place that we have before him, that we sit and stand in a posture of humility to say, God, we are your people. Lead us as you see fit.
The riches of this world will fade. The treasures of our God remain. Here I empty myself to all this world, nothing, and find everything in you. The riches of this world will treasures of our God remain. Here I empty myself to all this world, nothing. I find everything in you. I surrender, I surrender, I surrender all to you. Take my life and sacrifice. In you alone I'm satisfied. Here I empty myself to all this world, nothing, and find everything in you. Everything in you. I surrender, I surrender, I surrender all to you. I surrender, I surrender, all to you. Not my will, but yours be done. Not my strength, but yours alone. Nothing else but you, oh Lord. I find everything in you. Not my will, but yours be done. Not my strength, but yours alone. Nothing else but you, oh Lord. I find everything in you. I surrender, I surrender, I surrender all to you. I surrender, I surrender, I surrender all to you. I surrender, I surrender, I surrender all to
As we learn to surrender, as we learn to give Him everything that we have, that all that we have becomes His. He meets us in these moments of worship, and that's when He truly draws us into His presence, when we say, God, we are your people, yours and yours alone. We worship you. Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. Sing this with us. I'm not enough. unless you come, will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above everything, like the sun shaping the shadow. In my weakness, your glory appears. Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
together. God, as we come here today and we worship, as we stand in your presence, we find such great empowerment in knowing that when your people gather for worship, that you are here. And so as we learn how to humble ourselves before you, as we learn how to seek you first in all things, God, forgive us for those times and those moments when we were self-centered. We put our own wants and needs and desires above that which you had laid in our hearts. Forgive us for when our necks are stiff and our wills are strong. And God, instead, teach us to be humble before you. Teach us who you are and who you've created us to be, not just so we can grow, not because we seek to be the best version of ourselves. But God, I pray that you are training us and teaching us so that we can be sent out on the mission of God, so that we can go into this world to reflect who you are, to demonstrate your courage and your kindness and your love and your justice. That God, we would be your representation into this world. That is our prayer as a church, God. So Father, teach us and mold us and then send us, we pray. In Jesus' name. Well, we're so glad that you're here. Why don't you take a couple of minutes, greet everyone there around you, introduce yourself, be friendly, make sure you leave your seat. Don't just stay in your spot and sit down. Like, this is your moment. You know, move around, say hi to some people. Then after that, you can be seated.
I got a homesick heart, but a long ways left to go. I've been doing my part, but I ain't got much to show. So I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. Chasing that life, moving on, cause I had to prove there ain't no life worth doing what I did to you. So I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. I've got dreams that keep me up in the dead of night, telling me I wasn't made for the simple life. There's a lot I see, but it's far in the distance. I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. I've been working all night, maybe you could help me to believe this song ain't nothing if the song can't set you free. So I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. I've got dreams that keep me up in the dead of night, telling me I wasn't made for the simple life. There's a lot I see, but it's far in the distance. I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness. It's all for you in my pursuit of happiness. Sometimes you leave the ones you love, but if it's love, they won't give up, cause they know a war's raging, and you gotta choose. These days are tough, these days are long, sometimes it's hard to carry on, but I hear a voice singing, and I know it's true. I've got dreams that keep me up in the dead of night, telling me I wasn't made for the simple life. There's a lot I see, but it's far in the distance. I'm asking you to show me some forgiveness.
Well, we are so glad that you're here today, and it's my privilege to welcome you, especially if you are a guest with us this morning. We have guests at Beacon every single week, and so if this is your first time with us, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And whether you're a guest or whether you come regularly, I want to make sure that you know that if you have any questions about the church or about the facility or anything, make sure you visit the Welcome Center. You probably saw it on your way in the cafe. That's kind of the nerve center of what's happening. It's there that you can get questions answered about, where's the bathroom? How do I check in my kids? Or some next steps like, getting connected into group life, into small group, and getting plugged into ministries where you can serve. So make sure you visit the Welcome Center for anything like that. It's also where they tend to put the friendliest people in the whole church. So they are just standing there like vibrating, hoping that you're going to come up and talk to them. So make sure you hit the Welcome Center. Now, when you came in today, you received a connection card. It's at the bottom of your bulletin. If you could go ahead and take that out now, rip off that connection card. And whether it's your first time or you come every single week, we would love to receive a connection card from you to know that you were here. You can give us as much or as little information as you're comfortable with. We don't want to pry. We just want to stay in touch with you to let you know what's happening here at Beacon. If you're more of a digital person, you can also text the word CONNECT to our texting number, 516-200-3734. And that's the best way to let us know how we can be praying for you or how we can be equipping you for next steps here at the church. Also, in just a second, the ushers are going to come to receive today's financial gifts and connection cards. If you're a guest, please don't feel compelled in any way to give money. This is a time for those who call Beacon Church their home to contribute to all the ministries that happen here at the church. And every single week, I hear great stories about the generosity of what's happening because of what you are doing. In fact, we're going to talk about one of those things in just a minute. So if you're not quite ready for the ushers, don't worry. There's always a box in the back where you can put envelopes, where you can put connection cards, and of course, you can do all of this digitally as well, especially if you're joining us this morning via live stream. Good to have you with us, and you can hit the digital connection card for sure from there. So ushers, why don't you go ahead and come. Now, there's two things I want to make sure that you know all about this morning. First off, this week, this Saturday, is the Global 6K. Now, we've talked about this quite a bit, but I want to make sure that you know this is an opportunity that you have to have major impact. 6 kilometers is the average distance that a person, usually a child, in the developing world will walk in order to get water for their family. That water is usually not clean, and that walk is usually not safe. So this is a major world health crisis and child crisis, because when children are walking 6 kilometers to get water, they're also not attending school. And so the reason we do this is very simple. We come together this Saturday and we walk 6 kilometers, which is about 3.7 miles. You can walk, jog, or run. You can even rollerblade if you want. But you can come, and the reason we do that is if you will do it once this Saturday, then you will see to it that someone else in the world never has to make that walk again. So I hope that you'll come out. How many of you have already signed up for the 6K? Yeah, a lot of you, which is true. We already have the largest registration we've ever had. But there's also tons of you who didn't raise your hand yet. So you can totally sign up this week, and we'll see you Saturday morning around 9 o'clock over in East Williston at the Beacon building that we have over there. So I hope that you'll come. There's also something very exciting happening this summer, so check it out.
Are you ready to roar? Head out on an African adventure that engages the whole herd. Create a stampede of fun at Sing and Play Roar. Bring the Bible to life in Wild Bible Adventures. Experience jaw-dropping discoveries at Imagination Station. Run wild with high-energy activities at Stampede Sports. Discover what life is like for 5 amazing kids who live in Africa at KidVid Cinema. Get ready to let the good times roar!
So that's right. Our Vacation Bible School season kicks off today. We're excited. This is happening in July from the 8th to the 12th. VBS is a program for children ages about 4 years old to 4th grade where they spend a week with us, 3 hours each day, being immersed in the things of God. And I can tell you, I know many people whose lives were forever changed because they attended Vacation Bible School as a kid. I know that's the story for my wife. I know that's the story for Pastor Robert, that they went to Vacation Bible School. They were introduced to Jesus, and their life was never the same. Now, here's why it's important to us here this morning. There are two things that are starting. First of all, we are opening registration tomorrow. So if you have a kid in your life, a child, grandchild, neighbor, friend, tomorrow is the day to sign them up. Okay? Registration opens when? Right. When is it probably going to close? Also tomorrow, okay? Because we provide Vacation Bible School as a free gift to our community, simply as an outflow of the generosity of our congregation. So we do not charge admission, and it's also a very, very high-quality program. So for those two reasons, it always sells out. Well, we don't sell it. It's free. It always frees out, okay? It's totally packed, and there's a waiting list every year. So I don't want you to miss it. Make sure that you sign up your kids tomorrow. And even more importantly for you guys who are here today, we are starting to build this team, and this is a fun ministry to be a part of. There's a table in the cafe. Hit the table after service. Talk to the VBS directors about how you can plug in. If you're saying, Chris, I work July 8th to 12th during the day. There are other roles that you can do besides being at the VBS during the day. By the way, there's a lot of people who take a vacation week so they can be at VBS. So if you're like, I never get to use all my vacation, use some vacation time and come out. It's so much fun. So make sure that you sign up today for how you can join this team. Make sure you register your kids tomorrow. And this is going to be a huge program and a lot of impact that we can have together this summer. Cool? All right, don't miss it. Good. All right, let's take a minute now. Let's pray together as we focus our hearts and minds on God's word. God, as we've been worshiping this morning, we already sent to know that your presence is here. And so now as we focus ourselves on your word and on your truth, I pray that you find our hearts to be open as we seek answers to difficult questions, and we know that you have met us here and you are revealing these truths to us. So guide us in this time, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, welcome to our second week of the series that we're calling Other Hard Questions. We are asking the difficult questions, the ones that most people are asking, whether they're verbalizing it or not. Questions like, why is it that the small candy bars are considered the fun-size candy bars? Can somebody explain that to me? How is a square inch of Snickers bar considered the fun size? This is now, by the way, going to be my response when somebody calls me short. I'm just going to say I'm fun size. But seriously, today we're tackling a very difficult question, which is, hasn't science made faith obsolete? And the thinking behind this is that thousands of years ago, when we couldn't explain the natural phenomenon of the world, we had to come up with an explanation. So we said it was supernatural causes, and we came up with these myths and these gods and these fairy tales to explain the universe. But now we have science, and we have physics, and we have chemistry, and we can actually explain all of these things. So we don't need faith anymore because we can know things now. The late Christopher Hitchens, he says, religion was the race's first and worst attempt to make sense of reality, and it was the best the species could do at the time when we had no concept of physics, chemistry, biology, or medicine. It's taken us a long time to shrug off this heavy coat of ignorance and fear, and every time we do, there are self-interested forces who want to compel us to put it back on again. And this is a growing sentiment in the world that we don't need faith anymore because we have science, we have empiricism. And with that, there's this mindset that over here with science, you have the educated, you have the intelligent, you have the people that are thinking critically, and over here, you have the ignorant sheep that are still clinging to these religious myths. And it's a difficult question to answer, but it's an important question to ask. Is this true? Has science really made faith obsolete? and we're gonna tackle this. But I just want a quick disclaimer about the message, because it's going to feel a little different than a usual sermon at Beacon, because we're gonna race through some things, and I had to cut out more than I was able to keep in this message. But I will tell you that if you're new to Beacon and you're a Christian and you're looking for a regular sermon, this is going to feel a little strange, because we're going to get farther and farther into the message, and you're going to be like, we still haven't gotten to the Bible yet. When are we going to get to the Bible? I just want to say, we're going to get there, all right? Please be patient, bear with me, because whereas normally we would start with Scripture and kind of build out from there, we're actually going to start with nature, and we're going to build up, and we're going to, in the end, see how Scripture it kind of pulls all of these pieces together. So if you're nervous about that, we're going to get there. Please be patient. But there's a few questions we need to ask along the way if we want to know if modern science has made faith obsolete. And the first question, is there actually a conflict between faith and science? Are these two mutually exclusive? And the answer is quite simply no, for a couple of reasons. One, historically, there's never been any conflict between faith and science. In fact, the Christian faith was the breeding ground of modern science. And scientists like Galileo and Kepler and Bacon and Newton, all of these guys were devout Christians who understood the relationship between Christianity and science. And institutions like Princeton and Harvard and Yale and Brown, all of these started as Christian institutions as well. There's always been a relationship between faith and science, and that's still strong today. That in every area of science, there are Christians that are at the top of the field in top positions at top universities. In fact, in the last century, 65% of the Nobel Prize winners identified as Christians. Not just identified as people of faith, as Christians. So the men and women who are making some of the most influential contributions to physics and chemistry and economics identify as people of faith. We can't say that faith and science are in competition with one another. In fact, this is what Alistair McGrath says. He's a professor of science and religion at Oxford. He says, the idea that science and religion are in perpetual conflict is no longer taken seriously by any major historian of science. One of the last remaining bastions of atheism, which survives only at the popular level. See, what he's saying is that in pop culture, there's still kind of this understanding that there's faith and then there's science, but nobody who actually knows the data and is doing the research would agree with that anymore. It's a myth. But there's another reason why faith and science aren't in conflict, and that's because everyone has faith, even scientists. In fact, you ask any scientist, and they will tell you what we know about the universe is so small in comparison to what we don't know about the universe. And the more we learn, it just opens up more questions. We realize how little we know. And to say that science will tell us everything we need to know about the universe isn't a scientific statement. That is a faith statement. It's a reasonable statement, all right? That's important to distinguish. It's reasonable, but it's a faith statement. You can't prove that. And there's a lot of assumptions that we have to make in order to even do science. For instance, we all assume that our minds are perceiving reality and interpreting things accurately. But you can't prove that. We can't prove that we're not in the Matrix right now, that this isn't a simulation. Now, it's reasonable to say, no, we're not in a simulation, but we can't prove that. And we have to make there's a whole slew, and I don't have time to list them all, but there's a whole slew of assumptions that you have to make in order to even do science that you have to take on faith. So there's no competition between faith and science. These two have to go together, right? But where is the conflict? Because there is a conflict, and we see it, that there's empiricism, and then there's the people who subscribe to atheism, and then there's the Christian or theistic mindset, and there seems to be butting heads a lot. So where is the conflict? I want to look at three major conflicts, all right? And the first one I think is super important to touch on, is there is a conflict between reasonable faith and unreasonable faith. There's a conflict between faith that actually has evidence to back it up and sheer blind faith. And there are a lot of people who claim to be Christians that have blind faith. They have no reason for believing what they believe. They might have grown up in it, and that's all they've ever known, and they've never questioned, they've never thought about these things. And anytime they're challenged about their faith, they just dismiss it out of hand without actually dealing with some of the difficult questions. And there's this mental laziness that's not only unhealthy, but it's also not Christian. It's not loving God with our whole hearts. And Mark Knoll, he's a professor of history, particularly history of the Christian faith. He says, the scandal of the evangelical mind is that there's not much of an evangelical mind. Ouch. An extraordinary range of virtues is found among the sprawling throngs of evangelical Protestants in North America, including great sacrifice in spreading the message of salvation in Jesus Christ, open-hearted generosity to the needy, heroic personal exertions on behalf of troubled individuals, and the unheralded sustenance of countless church and parachurch communities. Notwithstanding all their other virtues, however, American evangelicals are not exemplary for their thinking. And they have not been so for several generations. Now, this is not somebody on the outside making these claims. This isn't an atheist accusing Christians of being idiots. This is a devout Christian who loves Jesus, and he loves the church, and he loves Christians, acknowledging that when he looks at the data, that it doesn't paint a great picture. Os Guinness, he backs this up. Os Guinness is another brilliant mind and a devout Christian, and also, fun fact, the great-great-great-grandson of this Guinness. Yeah, I'm serious, he really is. But he says, evangelicals have been deeply sinful in being anti-intellectual ever since the 1820s and 30s. For the longest time, we didn't pay the cultural price for that because we had the numbers. We had the social zeal and the spiritual passion for the gospel. But today, we're beginning to pay the cultural price. And you can see that most evangelicals simply don't think. And it has always been a sin not to love the Lord our God with our minds as well as our hearts and souls. And we have exerted this with a degree of pietism and pretending that this is something other than it is. That is sin. Evangelicals need to repent of their refusal to think Christianly and to develop the mind of Christ. And these are tough allegations, but there's truth to this, and we have to own up to where we've fallen short, the ways that maybe we have just relied on blind faith and we've dismissed things out of hand, because that isn't loving God with our minds. And so there is a part of this that we have to own up to. They can't blame the atheists and say they're painting this picture, because we've kind of done this. And I think that's important for us to start there. There is a difference between reasonable faith and unreasonable faith. And as Christians, we should have reasonable faith. The second conflict is between materialism and the metaphysical. Because obviously, there are plenty of thinking Christians involved in science and academia, and the conflict still persists. And this conflict between materialism and the metaphysical, when we talk about materialism here, we're not talking about like shoes and handbags, all right? It's not that kind of materialism. Materialism in this context, it means that the only thing, for a strict materialist, the only thing that's real is what is physical and tangible and measurable, what you could see with your eyes, and you can touch with your hands, and you can taste with your mouth. That's real. But anything that is metaphysical, anything that you can't see or touch or taste or measure, is unreal. It's an illusion. So God is an illusion. It's just a construct that we made up. But there's some serious ramifications with this. And this is the kind of the mindset of the new atheists, like the late Hitchens and Dawkins and Francis Crick and Sam Harris. These guys are proposing this sort of strict materialism. But there's really serious epistemological and cosmological ramifications to this, starting with the epistemological ones. Because if only the material world exists, if that's the only thing that's real, then love isn't real. It's not. It's a figment of our imaginations, kind of there to help us propagate the species. Morality isn't real, right? There's no objective morality. There's only things that benefit us and the species, but there is no real right and wrong. Now, I don't want to be misinterpreted here. I'm not saying that atheists are inherently immoral. That's not what there's plenty of atheists that are super kind, loving, generous people. That's not it. I'm just saying that morality at this point isn't objective. You can't say anything is evil. It's just not beneficial, or it's not preferable. Furthermore, human rights aren't real. You have no endowed value. These are just constructs of the brain. And you even take it to the nth degree. You aren't real. So your mind, your consciousness, your thoughts and memories, everything that you identify as you, just a figment of your brains, it's just a construct of your brain to help perpetuate the species. And this isn't me saying, this is what they claim. This is Francis Crick saying the astonishing hypothesis is that you, Your joys and your sorrows, your memories and your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules. That's a tough pill to swallow. And there's some real issues with that, because if your mind isn't real, right, if it's just this imaginary construct, how can you trust that anything your mind is telling you is real? Like, how can you know any of it is true if it's just synapses in your brain firing? And this is what Alvin Plantinga, the great philosopher, says. He says, from a naturalist point of view, the thought that our cognitive faculties are reliable would be at best a naive hope. It's as likely, given unguided evolution, that we live in a sort of dream world as that we actually know something about ourselves and our world. You see, there's real epistemological issues with trying to say that the world is only the material stuff, and you have to write off anything that's metaphysical or supernatural. But there's cosmological issues as well, and they were really introduced with the Big Bang Theory, not the TV show, the actual theory, because for a long time, secular scientists, they believed the universe always existed. It had no beginning or end. It just always existed in this constant, steady state. And that was fine. And then all of a sudden, they found out the data shows the universe had a beginning. And this really bothered a lot of secular scientists, because it sounded a lot more like in the beginning God created the world than they were comfortable with. And there's this other issue, because everything that has a beginning has something that moved it, something that caused it to begin. Oh, I accidentally hit my note thing. So everything that has a beginning has an inciting action, something that moves it. Like, you had a beginning. You didn't just spontaneously come into existence. You were born, and something caused your birth. And because there are children here, I won't say what that cause was. And I know you probably don't want to think about that either, but you know what caused you to come into existence. There's always a cause for everything that has a beginning. And before they thought the universe had a beginning, they were fine. It's just always here. But now that it has a beginning, what caused it to be? And the materialist says, nothing. No one made everything for no reason. Which could be true, right? Or is it slightly more reasonable that if time and space and matter all had a beginning, that something or someone that exists outside of time and space and matter initiated all of that and set it into motion? And that maybe that someone or something that exists outside of time and space and matter also is responsible for consciousness and things like love and morality and justice, and that these things aren't imaginary, that they're real, which requires more faith. These realities, combined with the fact that the universe is so finely tuned, right? It's not just that the universe is here and had a beginning, but it is so remarkably finely tuned. It's crazy. Stephen Hawking says that if 1 second after the Big Bang, the expansion rate of the universe was off, if it was off by 1 part in 100 quadrillion, which is a big number. There's like 17 zeros there. If it was off by just that much, the universe would have collapsed back in on itself. That if the gravitational force was different by 1 part in 10 to the 40th, I know there's only a couple of you that can't imagine what that's like. I'll give an illustration. So imagine that the universe, all right, there's a measuring line that goes from one end of the known universe all the way to the other end of the universe. That's the gravitational force. If it was off 1 inch in the span of the whole known universe, there would only be either red dwarf stars or blue giant stars, which means there would be no yellow sun, which means Superman would never get his powers. Also, there would be no life in the universe. 1 inch over the span of the universe. Could it be that maybe these things happened accidentally? Sure. This is the materialist mindset. It says, well, yeah, of course the probability of all these things happening accidentally is statistically impossible, but if you imagine that there's an infinite number of universes, then surely in an infinite number of universes, there has to be one that has the right properties for us to be here, and since we're here, then it's possible, and so blah, blah. That's possible, Like, sure, but what requires more faith? That, or that someone outside of time and space and matter who has the intelligence to be able to create a world and the power to create a world that is so nuanced and so complex that it actually provides life and love and justice and morality, which requires more faith. See, it's not unreasonable to believe that God is doing. In fact, David Bentley Hart, he says, this is a philosopher from Notre Dame, he says, I do not regard true philosophical atheism as an intellectually valid or even cogent position. In fact, I see it as a fundamentally irrational view of reality. Furthermore, all right, listen to what Richard Lewontin says. Okay, this is an evolutionary biologist. He's an atheist, all right? So he's a materialist. So this isn't like somebody on the this isn't a creationist accusing him. This call's coming from within the house, all right? He says, we take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories, because we have a prior commitment to materialism. It's not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes that create an apparatus of investigation, a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. You hear what he's saying there. He's saying, he's acknowledging that as an atheist and a materialist, he is putting blind faith in these material explanations, even if they sound completely absurd because they refuse to accept the possibility of God. That's not reasonable. What requires more faith? The third conflict is between evolution and creation. And this is a super popular one. The idea here is that the Bible says the world was created in 6 days, and science says that the world was created over millions of years through natural selection and the evolutionary process. And we see that these seem to be mutually exclusive, so science has disproved the Bible. We can no longer trust the Bible. Not only that, science has explained the complexity of life, so we don't need God to explain the complexity of life. But there's a few problems with this. One, and some of these I have to go through so fast. I wish I could spend more time. And I'm going to stay up here after. If anybody has questions and wants to ask them, go for it. But one, when it comes to Genesis 1 and the 6-day creation, there has never been Christian consensus on how to interpret Genesis 1 and whether or not to take it literally or figuratively. And it's a very strange genre. In some ways it reads like narrative, in other ways it reads like poetry. And so people, way before Darwin came on the scene, people struggled to understand how to interpret Genesis 1. So you don't have to take Genesis 1 literally to take the Bible seriously. All right. I'm not saying you can't take Genesis 1 literally. I'm just saying you don't have to. John Selhammer, he's one of the leading Old Testament scholars today. And this isn't like a liberal scholar trying to, fit the text to what we see. He's a conservative Old Testament scholar. He says many Christians have felt torn between an allegiance to the Bible and a recognition of the findings of modern science, a tear that is neither necessary nor helpful. When Genesis 1 and 2 are understood as Moses intended them to be understood, nearly all the difficulties that perplex modern readers instantly vanish, right? You don't have to take Genesis 1 literally in order to take the Bible seriously, all right? And again, I just want to reiterate, that doesn't mean you can't take Genesis 1 literally. It doesn't mean that I don't. I won't tell you how I take Genesis 1, so but you don't have to. Second issue with this is, how well do you know about the evidence for evolution? Because when it comes to evolution, if you ever doubt it in front of people, you get laughed at and well, this is ignorant creationism. However, there's some really big gaping holes in the theory that they thought would have been filled in by now, and they're not. And again, I'm not saying that evolution isn't true. I won't tell you what I believe about that one either, because I don't think it's that essential to the conversation. But listen to, this is Stephen Jay Gould, all right? He's an atheist, an evolutionary biologist at Harvard. He said, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, not the evidence of fossils. Darwin's argument still persists as the favored escape of most paleontologists from the embarrassment of a record that seems to show so little of evolution. All right? So this is an evolutionary biologist from Harvard who subscribes to evolution, is admitting there's not as much evidence as they thought they would have found by now. So could it be that evolution isn't quite the explanation? Maybe. Maybe not. It does explain things. But either way, don't let this be your reason for pushing God out of the picture, because it doesn't have to be. There's enough here to suspend doubt on this issue to see, is God real in other ways? But there's a bigger issue. And that's this idea that evolution has rendered the need for God no longer necessary. Because we have this explanation of how a single-cell organism can, through evolution, become this complex human being, we don't need God anymore. And the evolutionists and the creationists both agree, all right? They both agree on one thing, and that's there is the appearance of design. It looks like it was designed. The creationist says, well, that's because God designed it. The evolutionist says it's because of natural selection. Both are reasonable, but the evolutionist has one big problem, and that is first life. Because you take that simple single-cell organism, and what we know of DNA and RNA and epigenetics now, the amount of information in that single-cell organism it could fill 1,000 Encyclopedia Britannica volumes, all right? I just have to pause for a second, come over to the Fusion kids. So before Wikipedia existed, there were these things called encyclopedias, and they actually just printed Wikipedia into books, and they were sold door to door, and by the time you got them, they were already out of date. So imagine 1,000 of them filled with this information. Bill Gates, he says, human DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created by Microsoft. Apple might have had a different take on that, but Hubert Yockey, who worked on the Manhattan Project, says it's important to understand that we're not reasoning by analogy. The treatment is mathematically identical. So when we talk about filling 1,000 volumes of an encyclopedia, we're not saying it's like 1,000 volumes of random ones and zeros that just kind of got strewn out there. No, it has the same level of coherence and information that needs to hold together in just the right order as an encyclopedia would be to make sense. It's the same level of detail, right? If you were wandering through the wilderness and you came across Arches National Park, you'd look at it and be like, man, that is so cool. It looks like it's engineered. Nature is awesome what it can do. But if you were wandering through the wilderness and you stumbled on Mount Rushmore, you would not say, nature is so cool. Look what it can do. Because one screams of intelligence behind it. And DNA is, there's just no way around it. Something had to put this in here. And the issue with DNA is it's not that you can, if you tore one page out of that 2,000 or that 1,000 volume encyclopedia, it dies. It's irreducibly complex. You can't make it any simpler. It's at its simplest form. And you mess with it even just a little bit and it dies. So it can't actually mutate over time. It can't get to this place without starting this way. It screams of a designer. And this is the point that so many have said, all right, I give up. Sir Fred Hoyle, he was a Nobel laureate. He says the common sense interpretation of the facts is just a super intellect that has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry. And he says there has to be a super intellect. He still wouldn't concede God, so he said it was aliens, which only delays the problem. Antony Flew, he was an atheist, an outspoken atheist for 50 years. And back in 2006, he came to this conclusion. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinary, diverse elements to work together. What requires more faith in this setting? There's a scientist, Francis Collins. He led the Human Genome Project. So if there's anybody who knows about human DNA, actually nobody probably knows more about human DNA than Francis Collins. No one's who's ever lived. He's the guy. He's currently the head of the National Institute of Health. And I want to just share with you his story.
When I went to college and those discussions in the dorm late at night about religion began to occur, I had no particular reason to attach value to a faith system. It had never been something I was familiar with or had internalized at all. And I assumed that any religious feelings that anyone held must be on the basis of some emotional experience, and I didn't trust those, or on the basis of some childhood indoctrination, which I felt I was fortunate to have missed. I loved the experience of learning about the human body and all of the components of that, and I particularly loved being introduced to genetics. But then I ended up in the medical school curriculum sitting at the bedside of patients with diseases. This was no longer an abstract study of molecules and organ systems. These were real people. And one afternoon, one of my patients, a wonderful elderly woman, much like a grandmother, who had very bad heart disease. She had a particularly bad episode of chest pain while I was with her. She got through it, and at the end of that, explained to me how her faith was the thing that helped her in that situation. She realized that the doctors around her weren't really giving her that much help, but her faith was. And after she finished her own very personal description of that faith, she turned to me, and I had been silent, and she looked at me quizzically, and she said, "What do you believe, doctor?" And ultimately, I had to admit to myself that her question had made me realize that I had arrived at an answer to the most important issue that we humans ever deal with. Is there a God? And I had arrived there without ever really looking at the evidence. And I was supposed to be a scientist. If there's one thing scientists claim they do is to arrive at conclusions based upon evidence. And I hadn't taken the trouble to do that. I was greatly assisted by a pastor who lived down the road, who I went and asked about all this, and who gave me a copy of C.S. Lewis's wonderful book, Mere Christianity. Because here was an Oxford scholar, a prodigiously developed intellect, who had traveled the same path. Within those pages, I realized for the first time that one can come to belief on a rational basis, and that in fact, given the many pointers that one sees around oneself in terms of the universe and it having a beginning, and its fine-tuning in terms of the way in which all those constants that determine the behavior of matter and energy seem to have been set just in a certain very precise range to make life possible. And many other things, including my beloved mathematics and why they actually work anyway to describe the universe, something that makes you think the Creator must have been a mathematician. That brought me then to the person of Jesus Christ as a person who was historically extremely well documented. That was news to me. I thought Christ was as much myth as history, and I realized after reading more about it, this was a historical figure upon which we have a great deal of evidence for his existence and his teachings, and even his rising from the dead in a literal way. That day at my patient's bedside started a journey for me, a journey that I was reluctant to begin, but I felt I needed to, a journey that I thought would result in strengthening my atheism, but to my surprise, resulted in my conversion.
I think we can say with some level of certainty that science isn't the problem. It's not that science is preventing anyone from coming to God. There's just too much evidence that points in that direction that gives us a reasonable explanation for the existence of God. So what is it that obstructs faith? If it's not science, what is it? And if you're here and you're skeptical and you're kind of keeping God at arm's length, maybe it is your story is like Francis Collins, that you actually haven't examined the evidence, that maybe you've kind of just heard some sound bites and you made some assumptions along the way. And maybe, for others, maybe you just don't want there to be a God. Maybe for some, it's not that the idea of God is so far-fetched, but it's that the implications of a real God are too far-reaching, and you don't want that involvement in your life, not in your universe. Thomas Nagel, he's an atheist philosopher at NYU. He admits this. He says, I want atheism to be true, and I am made uneasy by the fact that some of the most intelligent and well-informed people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like that. The 17th century philosopher Blaise Pascal, he says, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. And here we find, guys, I told you we get there. We finally come to Scripture because this is what the Bible has been saying all along. In Romans 1, it says, people suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, this power that was able to set the world into motion, his divine nature, the intelligence and the wisdom and the love and the beauty that was all behind this, these things have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. See, God's nature and his power has been on display from the beginning, but our tendency is we want to suppress these things. We want to suppress the truth about God because it's not convenient if there is a God. It's much easier to say, I can't explain the complexity of the universe. Well, there must be a multiverse. Or I can't explain the complexity of humanity and the mind, all of that. Well, it's got to be evolution. And I can't explain all the things that we're dealing in the world and the mind and the feelings and all of that. Well, it's just got to be materialism. And we take these big ideas and we start to compress them down and we pack them in, because if you can make the truth about God small enough, if you could suppress it, then you get to be in control. And you can throw that in your bag and you get to still lead your life. You get to be in charge and you get to take these things wherever you want to go. And you have all that autonomy. But if God is real, he's not going to fit in your suitcase. Dawkins, in a debate, he said, God can't possibly exist because the universe is so complex. The universe is so complex that if God made the universe, he would have to be even more complex than the universe, and that's too big. Yes! Yes, now you're getting it. He's that big. He doesn't fit in our suitcase. God, he's more like the cruise ship, right? You can't wrap your minds around this, and you can't lead the way. You can either get on board or stay on the shore. And that choice is yours. And it's scary because if you get on board, you don't know where the ship is going. And you don't know if you're going to like that. You lose control. There's a sense of your autonomy that you're giving up and you're relinquishing, and that's scary. I was talking to a friend of mine who's not a Christian, and we're doing this series, and so I asked him, what are your objections to faith? And he says, I don't have any. I don't have any questions. It all makes sense. I just don't want to. I don't want to change my life. I don't want to do anything differently. I like being in charge. And maybe for you, you've been kind of keeping God at arm's length because you don't like the ramifications that if he's real, he gets to call the shots. And I want to say, will you be willing to just search? Will you open yourself up to the possibility that maybe there is a God? Because it's true, you don't get to lead the way, but think about this for a moment. If you know the person who's driving the boat, it's okay. You don't have to know where it's going. Because if you know that it's this God who created the cosmos, who has this power and this wisdom and this brilliance and this beauty, who created the cosmos, but he also was willing to sacrifice his son for you, as Paul says in Romans 8, how will he not also along with Jesus give you all things? And I don't want you to take my word for it. I don't. I want you to be able to look into this yourself, and I want to encourage you, if you've been keeping God at arm's length, would you just give him a chance? Would you open yourself up to the possibility that he exists? And we have Alpha starting on Tuesday. This is a great place. It's a free course. It's a place where you can just ask questions. You can talk these things through. You're not going to have anything shoved down your throat. You don't have to agree with any of this stuff. It's a place to just investigate some of the evidence. And for those of you who are Christians, who already believe there's a God, I want to ask you, are you willing to keep searching as well? Is it possible that maybe you've been lazy in loving God with your mind. And I want to encourage you to take up the challenge to keep studying God. And we have this book, The Problem of God. Turns out we sold almost all of them in the first service. Sorry. But we're going to get more. You could also get this yourself on Amazon. But this is a great place to start, where you could say, I'm going to investigate. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. I'm going to study the Creator. And I'm going to refuse to be lazy or apathetic in my thinking, so I could see the grandeur and the beauty of our amazing Creator. Let me pray for us. Father, it is with great humility that we come before you, recognizing that you are the creator of the cosmos, this universe that's so huge, and that we get to now even talk to you or relate to you is incredible. But even more so, God, that you would be willing to send your Son to take on our human flesh, to suffer and die for us. God, it's incredible. You're incredible, and we love you. And I pray for everyone here that you'll open their hearts and their minds to search and to know you and all that you have for us. God, we love you and we trust you with all these things. In Jesus' name. Amen.
As we prepare our hearts for communion, would you join me in these responsive readings? Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. We exchanged your glory for created things. We exchanged the truth about you for a lie, and we exchanged natural, loving behaviors for selfish passions. Yet you made your Son, Jesus, who had no sin, to be sin for us, that we might be made righteous in your sight. When Jesus came and he lived on the earth, he was given for us. He left behind all of the glory of heaven and instead humbled himself to be a man and even take death on a cross and to receive our punishment. That has forever closed the gap between the God who created the heavens and the earth, who is perfect, and we, his created things, who fell to sin. And so, as we've talked so much this morning about the glory and the grandeur of creation and of science, we're also reminded that Jesus stepped close and personal to us so that all could be made right between us and God. So let's take a moment of silent reflection and prayer, thanking him for the forgiveness of sins and the newness of life that we have in him. Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. On the same night that Jesus was betrayed, he sat with his disciples. He broke bread. He said, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth the true bread from heaven. We eat this bread to remember his body that was given for us. In the same way, after dinner, he took the cup. He told the disciples, "This cup is my blood. It's the currency of the new covenant. My blood has paid for the forgiveness of your sins. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth the fruit of the vine." We drink this cup to be reminded of his blood that was spilled for us for the forgiveness of our sins. As often as we eat this bread and we drink this cup, we proclaim his death until he comes again. So I invite you to stand in just a moment. We're all going to receive the elements of communion together. You don't have to be a member here at Beacon Church or a regular attender to receive the elements of communion. We invite everyone who's pursuing a relationship with Jesus to join us here at this table of communion. So, would you come? Sure and steady, my hope is held in your hand. When castles crumble and breath is fleeting, upon this rock I will stand. Upon this rock I will stand. Glory, glory, we have no other King but Jesus, Lord of all. We raise the anthem, our loudest praises ring, we crown him Lord of all. Your kindly rule has shattered and broken the curse of sin still in me. My life is hidden beneath heaven's shadow. Your crimson flood covers me. Your crimson flood covers me. Glory, glory, we have no other King but Jesus, Lord of all. We raise the anthem, our loudest praises ring, we crown him Lord of all. Know that in every season, in every situation, in every moment, Jesus stands far and above anything that we face in this world. In all my sorrows, Jesus is better. Make my heart believe. In every victory, Jesus is better. Make my heart believe. Than any comfort, Jesus is better. Make my heart believe. More than all riches, Jesus is better. Make my heart believe. And our souls declaring, Jesus is better. Make my heart believe. A song eternal, Jesus is better. Make my heart glory, glory. We have no other King but Jesus, Lord of all. Glory, glory. We have no other King but Jesus, Lord of all. We raise the anthem, our loudest praises ring. We crown him Lord of all. We crown him Lord of all. Would you join me in this communion response? There is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. What shall we say in response to these things? I'm so glad that you came so that we could worship together today. Join us next week as we continue to dig into these other hard questions, and have a great week.
On the run, we're on the run. On the run, we hit the brakes, we'll keep moving. Left with none, we're left with none. Left with none except these scars and these bruises. When everything turns dim.